Hey everyone, welcome back to Everything Women's Wrestling. This is episode number 12. And today we have, wow, what an important conversation we have today with Latifah McBryde. She is the wrestler who placed second at U20 World Team Trials in May down in Texas and is being told that she cannot compete in the Pan American Championships that she qualified for because she wants to wear modest athletic gear. She is a Muslim woman and wants to cover during her matches, and is being told because she will not wear a singlet that she's not going to be permitted to compete. And so it's an important conversation that we have with Latifah to talk about what that barrier means to her, how we can work together as a wrestling community to have discussions about being more flexible and reasonable to include women who wish to dress more modestly during competition. So I hope that every single person in the wrestling community listens to Latifah as she talks and explains what we can be doing better to support women like herself. So please take the time, it's important, and join us to listen in on this conversation. All right, so we are joined on the Everything Women's Wrestling show today by Latifah McBryde and her father, Mustafa. So thank you so much for being here today, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
And I'm a huge fan of Latifah. I know, Latifah, you've had a lot of success in the sport of wrestling. Your family, honestly, has had a lot of success in the sport of wrestling. You're one of 6 siblings, 4 of which wrestle. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's your family business. I can relate to that. And the Ayers family wrestling is our family business too. But you're close by to New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey. I know you guys are in Buffalo, New York. But I just was doing some research on you before logging onto the show and just really was impressed with, you have a brother that won a U23 title back in 2017. He's an assistant coach at West Virginia. Your dad has coached you and your siblings, your sisters. You yourself, Latifah, just placed at the U20 World Team Trials in Texas in May, second. And so that qualifies you to wrestle in the Pan Ams Championships. And so we're going to get into all of that. And we want to hear about the barriers, being a Muslim woman and not wanting to wear a singlet, wanting to wear more modest athletic wear, and how that's holding you back and really permitting you at this point from participating in that Pan American Championship. So we're going to talk all about that. I can't wait to get into that topic and have you share your story. But let's back up a second, and I'd love for you to jump in with my first question being, Latifah, at the ripe old age of 17, what has your journey been like so far in the sport of wrestling?
It's been a really good one. It's fun. So I've been wrestling for around 12 years. So we started wrestling. My dad wrestled in college and high school and stuff. So my brother started wrestling. We jumped into the practices. And we just worked just because we like the sport. We didn't actually know if we were ever really going to wrestle, like be able to wrestle. So we just worked really just because we like the sport. So
was it always something that you thought you would do, just being around your family and seeing wrestling? Or was it where there's a moment where you asked your family if you could wrestle, or was it just sort of a given?
It just kind of happened, I guess. We were just sitting there during practice. Me and my sisters would come along with my brother's practice. And there was a girl in practice, and our coach asked if my older sister, Jamila, could jump in. And she jumped in, and the coach said that my dad had to get us into wrestling. So that was like the first practice that we participated in. But for me, like a turning point, I'd say like when I got serious about wrestling myself, I think I was 10 or 11. That's when I kind of started taking it seriously, training on my own, paying attention to diet. So
your story is not unlike most stories, right? You saw wrestling, you saw mainly probably males wrestling, and maybe a one or two women in the practice room, and then you got involved. That my daughter wrestles. She's near your age, Latifah, and her story is not unlike yours, right? Just watching it and being interested and wanting to get involved. Okay. So I'm so excited. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and move on.
There were conversations about my daughter's wrestling with myself and local coaches. Keith Mowdy, coach of Niagara Common Community College, who runs Cobra Wrestling Academy, and the understanding was that my daughters probably would never wrestle. That's kind of how I felt, because I knew the implication of not wearing the singlet just in local tournaments and with the wrestling community. And I didn't think it was a fight that I could win in any way. But the more my daughters kept coming to practicing solely for the purpose of practicing, and also, to be fair, for the benefit that wrestling provides jiu-jitsu, which really did open up a lot of opportunities for them to grapple. Wrestling, jiu-jitsu has a very different idea when it comes to selling its sport, and says it's for everyone. So we found that there was a benefit that wrestling provided my daughters in jiu-jitsu, but as far as wrestling was concerned, I really never thought that we'd be given the opportunity. I thought the fight would be too thick and running into networks of individuals that were against it. I thought would just make it not happen. And thanks be to God, it changed.
So interesting. So Latifah, have you felt supported by the individuals in New York State and who you've encountered at clubs in terms of being welcomed into the wrestling space?
I've only wrestled at a few clubs in New York. I was at Cobra Wrestling Academy. That's where we started. Mm-hmm. And everyone there is super supportive. It's kind of like a little family, just Cobra Wrestling Academy. The people that were there from the beginning, all of them went and signed and shared the petitions. People I hadn't seen in years went and signed and shared it. So there's a lot of support there. I went to a few other clubs in the area, and I've had a lot of support there as well. Bison Wrestling Academy, the Buffalo Wrestling Academy at UB as well. So those are the clubs in New York that I've been at so far that have been really supportive.
Also, one particular club that was really supportive of my daughter's wrestling was the Brock Wrestling Club at Brock University in Canada. Coach Marty Calder, Olympian, Tanya Verbeek. All the ladies in there, an amazing room full of killer women. Just they kept pressing me as well, like saying, Mustafa, you've got some ladies here who can really bang. You shouldn't let this just go. And I'm thankful to them for pushing me, because I really wasn't certain that I would be able to move on this, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Those ladies are amazing. I haven't seen them in around 2 years, over 2 years now, because of COVID. We couldn't go to Canada. But even though
Brock University.
The Brock at the bottom.
Yeah, I believe didn't Skylar Grote? Skylar Grote went to Brock University, right?
Yeah, we got to wrestle with her while we were up there as well. It was great. But all of the women up there, even though it's been 2 years, we're all still in contact and stuff. We text each other all the time and stuff. So they're great. They're super supportive.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. And Brock University obviously is in Canada. Yeah. So Latifah, educate us, right? Like the purpose really for me of doing this podcast with you is to give you a chance to tell your story, to amplify your voice, and really to educate the wrestling community on what you're experiencing so we can do better. So as a Muslim woman, Latifah, how does your training and competition differ from what the majority of female wrestlers experience?
Yeah, so as Muslim women, we don't train with guys. Our coaches, if it's a male coach, they can't touch us while we're drilling. Like if our hand placement is wrong, they just have to tell us you have to move your hand. And then also, obviously, training partners are limited, especially before Brock when we were younger. we really only had 2 training partners besides like me and my sisters. So it's been limited from the beginning. And then obviously when we started going to Canada, it was amazing. It was great. We had basically unlimited partners whenever we went to practice. And then back now, I'd say we have even less training partners than I did when we were little. Like we had those 2 training partners that were at the gym all the time, but now it's just me and my sisters. So we just wrestle amongst each other when we can. So
When they're not arguing, it's like pulling. They don't wrestle much with each other. It's horrible sometimes.
So that's not different. Okay, the sibling thing is not different.
No, it's not different.
But you're allowed to wrestle with your dad, right? And you're allowed to wrestle with your brothers. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. But you're right. Like in New York State, you live in Buffalo, New York. There's it's fairly rural in that area outside of Buffalo, right? So it's not like it's a mecca for tons and tons of female wrestlers. And so it does limit you. So I can see why you would need to expand geographically and head to Brock and do some of those creative training, take advantage of some of those creative training opportunities. What about competition? What does that look like for you right now?
So for competition, it's fairly limited. We don't compete a lot. This year so far, I think I've done 3 tournaments so far. That's it. So it's not like we're going to tournaments every weekend. And even those 3 tournaments, we have to go and like contact people, make sure it's okay that we'll be coming or whatever. So initially for USA Wrestling tournaments 2 years ago, my dad reached out to make sure that the uniform was okay, and then they gave us the green light. They said they checked with EWW, and they said it was fine. So that's how it's a little different.
We don't just register for tournaments and show up. That doesn't work.
Right.
So long before the tournament, begins, I reach out to the tournament director. I try to send video or pictures, ask if it's okay, especially because oftentimes these tournaments are a bit of a distance away from Buffalo. So I'm not just going to take a trip to, 5-10 hours away just to be told you can't, wrestle here or compete here. It did happen to us once doing jiu-jitsu, in fact, for the same reason. The International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation wouldn't let my daughters compete in no-gi without wearing fight shorts shorts or spandex, spats, sports bra. They wanted us to dress that way, and we were actually in Nevada, and so we went all the way out there for this tournament and was unable to compete in the no-gi competition. So using that experience in jiu-jitsu, I'm not going to do that with wrestling. So I always try to contact them ahead of time.
So it sounds like a lot of footwork, before planning to go to any of these events. So a lot of extra work, on your part. Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes, sometimes it gets a little sticky. Sometimes they don't get back to me, so we don't go. It's not just like we register and go.
We're going to get into the specifics too. I want to ask you some questions about the uniform and what a modest uniform looks like, and have you describe to us what you do wear. But before we do that, maybe Latifah, you can explain to us or give us some, your wish, right? Like you're a successful woman in the sport of wrestling in the United States. You're trying to navigate this the best you can, and by all accounts in a very lovely way, especially in my opinion. What do you wish the wrestling community knew about the Muslim religion? What do you think are misconceptions by people, and what would help you for people to know?
I think if they just understood the religion, and understood Muslim women too. I think there's a lot of misconceptions just in America in general. There's this idea that we're oppressed, brainwashed, we're forced to dress the way we're dressed. but it's not that case. I choose to dress this way. So I wish that they understood that it's not this this forceful position. It's not like my dad's forcing me to dress this way. I'm choosing to dress this way. And that's the case for other Muslimas too. Or Muslimas are just it's a word that refers to Muslim women, by the way. So I wish that they knew that and understood that and respected that as well. It's kind of the same thing for other religions as well. They don't label, I don't know, Amish women for dressing the way that they dress. That's just an example, but it could go for any religion, really. They don't put the label of oppressed on these other women as much as they do for Muslim women. Just understanding and respecting our position and religion. So.
And I totally understand and respect that. And honestly, to some extent, am envious to some degree. Like, I like that you can enter a space and have it be about yourself and not necessarily about your appearance or your form or, you know, your hair. And I've heard other Muslim women talk about that piece of it. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the idea of the way that we dress is to conceal our beauty. Our beauty is supposed to be only for those who are closest to us, our direct family. So guys aren't supposed to be able to see our form, our hair, any type of beauty like that is supposed to be concealed. So with that being said, for us to dress like that, like you said, it's I'd say it's like the only advantage when it comes to wrestling, modestly, that people aren't judging us based on how we appear. Not how we appear as in like with the uniform, but how we appear as in like physically, whether it's our form, our hair, stuff like that. So I feel like that's a really nice thing about it. So
Yeah, beautifully put. And I think just hearing that piece of it is helpful, right? I don't think people think of it that way. Unfortunately, there are some negative talk, I think, and I think you clearing that up is so brave and beautiful of you. So thank you so much for sharing that. I also would love to hear from you about maybe some experiences that you've had. Obviously, you've had very positive experiences too in the sport of wrestling, so we don't want to harp on negative, but it is important to highlight some things that we could be doing better. I know USA Wrestling has worked to help support you and make sure that we're lowering the barriers to entry for you to compete in the United States. We have some work to do, and we're going to talk about that internationally. But when you step onto the mat to compete, even in the United States, Latifah, what are some of the things that are challenges that you're facing? That maybe if we talk about it and some officials or some, potential opposing female athletes that you're going to encounter moving forward, or opposing coaches, what can we help them to better understand that's going to make you more comfortable when you're competing in events?
In terms of comfortability, when I step on the mat, I'm not really concerned with those things. I don't think of those things when I'm wrestling. I just wrestle. So I've never had on the mat, especially for the USA Wrestling tournaments that I've competed in, I've never had an athlete say anything to me an athlete that I'm competing against say anything to me directly about my uniform. In terms of the officials I've had haven't said anything to me, but there was an experience with my older sister that was a little disturbing. So my dad was directly involved in that situation. I don't know if he wants to say it so that I don't get anything misunderstood.
So when we first went to Texas last year, 2021, my eldest daughter approached the score table to indicate she's there ready to wrestle. And the official at the table then began to ask her a bunch of questions about what she has on underneath her clothes, why she was wearing the stuff. She had to take it off. He was telling her. She then tried to tell him, the individual at the table, that we have permission from Cody Bickley he really wasn't really receptive to that. And I could tell from sitting in the corner that there was some sort of interaction that was going on. So I got up and I approached the table, and he asked me what's going on. And I told him, we have permission. Before we came, we have permission from Cody Bickley. And he says, well, yeah, you and them, they should tell us. We should know. And then he goes on to tell me that if I'm lying, he's going to give me a red card. I just kind of walked away from the table thinking to myself, like, I'm not a child, but like, wow, I thought red cards were for soccer only, but I guess I'm going to get kicked out of the tournament or something. So that was awkward. This is what got kind of disturbing. I don't think the gentleman knew he was being recorded, but then you could hear him say certain things, right? Somebody go find someone. This poor girl's going to lose. Weird statements about, it's got to be skin to skin. Like, I don't know what that means even, like, in terms of wrestling. Like, what does that mean? Saying that, her shirt got caught up in the match in relation to her opponent. And you're watching the video and there's nowhere where it's getting caught. My daughter's just doing her thing, ducks and snaps and go behinds. And I just thought to myself, wow, that's deep. And had he have known that he was being recorded, right? I'm not sure he would have spoken so much.
Yeah.
So I think with other people that do know that they're being recorded, they may hold their tongues.
Well, you bring up sort of 2 points there, I think, that are important to just bring to light and continue to discuss, which are, look, like, we need to be doing a better job, most likely, and I would say we're at sort of the beginning of being more open-minded to lowering the barriers to the way that we think about the singlets and the uniforms for female wrestlers, which is awesome. But we need to now back that up with training and making sure that our officials are aware that these women are out there, and this is an approved official uniform that USA Wrestling, our national governing body, has allowed and permitted. And to train the officials on what is appropriate, because obviously, and really, Latifah, that's what I was talking about. You're a brave woman, clearly, so that wouldn't rattle you most likely, but that would very much rattle me if I was preparing to wrestle at a world team qualifier and I had trained all year and years, obviously prior to that. And so much was on the line. And these are conversations I'm having to have with the table official right before stepping on my foot onto the line to compete in a way that you were about to compete. That's stressful and a disadvantage. And so, we have a lot of work to do, I think, just myself included, becoming more educated on the Muslim faith and how we can better support athletes and lower the barriers to entry to women who want to dress modestly when they compete.
You mentioned something about the religion of Islam in relation to the dress, and that's, I think she's not really aware of this on the international scope, but there's something that's become really clear to me. So women are now, pushing back against sort of male hegemony that states that you've got to look a particular way in order to compete. Muslim across the board. I mean, women across the board. Right, in all sports. So you had the women in Europe who were volleyball players who said they refused to wear those sort of underwear sort of things, and they wanted to remain covered, and they were applauded. And so should they be. But what's ironic is when a Muslim woman says, I want to remain covered when I do this, that I want to have some level of modesty, the message is not seen the same oftentimes. It's not identified in the same way as the ladies in Europe who are playing volleyball. It's kind of it's like the messenger changes the message, right? So that's something that I wish the world or America or wrestlers in general would kind of identify. Like, when those women did it, good for them. But when Muslim women say, I can't shake your hand, or I gotta cover up this way, it's like, if it comes from a religious standpoint, the interpretation of the message changes based on who the messenger is.
Yeah.
I think this might be a little easier for people to understand if I put it in this way of like thinking in terms of us dressing the way we dress. If you have like a diamond or something valuable or precious or whatever, you're not just going to have it out to the open for everyone to see. You're going to have a VIP card in order to see, you know, that special crown or jewel or whatever. So Muslim women are viewed as if they were that jewel or something precious or valuable. So maybe if that's an easier way to understand how women are viewed in Islam, as if they are that precious jewel or whatever. So
Yeah,
I hope
that's a great way to put it. And honestly, and like yourself, Latifah, and your father are putting, it's not just Muslim women who want to sometimes compete modestly. So it's an issue across a lot of different sports. I also heard you mention something about shaking hands, the shaking of hands. So can you tell me a little bit about what you try to avoid with shaking of the hands and some of the customs that we sort of are unconscious about in the sport of wrestling when we compete? Tell us what would be helpful for officials or for opposing coaches to understand about shaking hands.
Generally, so when we step on the mat, and the ref like goes to shake her hand or give us a fist bump or whatever, we'll just kind of go like this and explain to them, sorry, as a Muslim woman, we don't have contact with guys who aren't our relatives. And they don't have a problem with it. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, I understand. And even when they're raising our hand, they won't actually grab our arm. They'll just raise their hand. So that's really nice. I love how they accommodate us with that. For the coaches, some coaches who get a little like especially after we beat them, or coaches that just don't like us in general. I had a instance. This wasn't in it doesn't happen as much in wrestling, but it's happened in a jiu-jitsu tournament I was at. And I was competing and I beat the girl. And after I went up to her corner to say thanks, and the guy's like, oh, thank you. And he didn't say it like very like respectfully or anything. He kind of said it with a little bit of an attitude, I guess you could say. And I was like, oh, sorry, as Muslim. I explained it to him. And he goes, oh, it doesn't matter. You could shake my hand. And I'm like, no, I can't. I as a Muslim woman, I can't shake your hand. And he kept pressing for it. And I just kind of like looked at him. I was like, sorry, but no. And the one girl that was on his team turned and was like, she's already said that she can't shake your hand. And she was going at her coach like, there's nothing wrong with that. Why are you pressing her like that?
Right.
And he just kind of like glared at his athlete and just walked away. And I just kind of like said, oh, sorry to the girl, and walked away. And then after, she came up and found me and she was like apologizing and stuff. And after the tournament ended, the coach came up to me and he was like, yeah, sorry about that. And walked away. So I think that's just another thing. Like when we say like we can't shake your hand, just respectfully saying okay. It's not that we're like trying to come off as like, oh, we're not going to shake your hand type of thing. It's just for our religion. That's all it is.
We don't mean to demonstrate a lack of sportsmanship, is what she's trying to say.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I'm so glad that you shared that on here, because I think that's really going to educate a lot of coaches. And
also, when I'm in the corner, I think that for the wrestler, when she comes to me at, again, demonstrating that sportsmanship, her opponent comes to me and, the usual, modus operandi is handshaking and thank you. And I have to say, I'm sorry, I can't, but great match. And I try to encourage them. And, so I think that would be important for people to know as well. And yeah, that would be important for people to know.
So you don't shake hands either with the women?
I won't shake hands with any women, okay. Young women. If I met you, Miss Ayers, it would be a pleasure to meet you, and there would be no physical contact whatsoever. When I coach wrestling or jiu-jitsu, I don't touch them. I don't touch any of the ladies. Men, I can obviously shake hands and wrestle and so forth, but I don't have physical contact.
He'll usually just call us over and tell us to move our head where it's supposed
right,
to.
Right, I'll have them show. I had a Taekwondo teacher who was a woman, and her respect of that maintaining of the physical separation, she actually had a stick, and she would actually, use her stick to put my hand in proper position for any of the drills or whatever we were doing. So it is new, I guess, for a lot of people, but it's out there. It's out there, and in all respect, some of the responsibility goes on the shoulder of Muslims, and because we've either chosen not to participate or to concede completely, or to some level of concession. So when people see us and say, well, other Muslim women wrestle, Algeria has a national team member, or what about Turkey? Turkey's 98% Muslim. They have Muslim women. You're right, and they do, and this is no judge on their level of religiosity or anything like that. But first and foremost, I'm American, and I have the right to practice my religion. It's built into America, and I'm proud of being American, and so I'm going to exercise that. So that's what we're doing, and this is found in my religion as well. In case others, of your viewership see this, these aspects of my religion are not fringe. They're not like some weird part of this. This is standard parts of my religion, and it's found even in Christianity. There are Christian preachers and pastors who will not be alone with women, who in an elevator even. They won't have physical contact with women. So this is not as weird as people may think.
I love that you're sharing it. I love that we're educating people. And I love that hopefully other Muslim women are going to hear this podcast and know that there's a place for them. So I would love, right? So Latifah, I want to hear about your training leading up to Women's Nationals in May this year. What did that look like for you?
Well, barely any wrestling. Mostly just workouts. My dad runs a workout group. We do a lot of stuff. It's just, we have an open lot next to our house. That's kind of open to the public. People walk by, they jump in. We have some other athletes that are there too, but it was mostly just those workouts. And then I do a lot of stuff on my own as well. So I do a lot of shadow wrestling, a lot of conditioning on my own, a little bit of lifting as well. But yeah, barely any wrestling. We did wrestle here and there, like me and my sisters, but like my dad said, we don't wrestle that much.
Not as much competition. So, but you were permitted to, right? So you had spoken earlier about how USA Wrestling had worked out that you were able to wrestle in more modest athletic gear. And so what does that modest athletic gear look like? What was the consensus, and what did UWW approve through our national governing body, USA Wrestling, for you to during competitions?
So I think my dad had sent them the image of the women's classical wrestling uniform, and that's what was approved for us to wrestle in. So that's what we tried to follow. So we wear the pants that are just right below the knees. They're secured with elastic. We wear the leggings underneath, and then we have the long sleeve shirt with, it's kind of like a hood that was attached that we altered a little bit to fit like more snug. And then over that we have our t-shirt that we tuck in. Most recently we found that we have to tape it up as well, so it doesn't like come untucked and stuff. That helps a little bit. And then we also tape our head so that our head covering doesn't come off. And then we also wear knee pads over the pants to help secure them as well. So,
okay.
The long sleeve shirt you spoke of is actually spandex. It's long sleeve compression gear. The headpiece that covers her head while she's wrestling is actually it's attached. It's sewn to it, so it goes on like almost like a turtleneck that covers her hair. And then, as she said, they tape the top of that to try to make sure it doesn't come off even while wrestling.
Okay.
And then underneath all of this, we also do wear our singlet just in case anything comes up inadvertently, so that our skin doesn't show or whatever. So
Okay, so a picture says 1,000 words here because very good description. But I am gonna, and you brought up another topic. You said classic women's wrestling, and so that's something that was new to me. So I just wanted to show the viewers that if you go to the uww.org website, at the top here there is a tab where you can click on About UWW, and it will come up with some options here on the left-hand side. If you scroll down and go to committees, you can see that associated styles pop up. And this was news to me, that there is an associated style called Women Classic Style, like you had referred to, Latifah. And so this is information about that style. It talks about how the style was brought about to bring more women into the sport of wrestling. It talks about the rules, the weight categories, of course. Most of the rules, it seems like, are the same. It sounds like the one big change is there is one period of 3 minutes. And then there are some pictures here. There's also at the top a link to read about the rules, as well as a link to the events. The events, I had clicked on that link earlier and tried to see when the latest events had occurred in women's classic style wrestling. And that, unfortunately, seems like the last event was in 2018. So certainly not something that is practiced too much. But there was also a link here, with all the rules. And here are some pictures to sort of go with what you're saying. So is this similar to what you wear then, Latifah, when you're practicing, or not practicing, but competing?
Yeah, for competing, that's almost exactly what we wear. Besides, like, the colors, like we didn't wear like the colored bottoms. Like ours are just black. Same with the leggings, and the top, like the spandex top underneath as well. But with the shirt, we were changing that red or blue depending on what we were. So,
I mean, to me, this looks like a full body singlet. And then on top of that, the approved, like, United States high school 2-piece uniform that just goes on top of a full body singlet. Am I wrong about that? Does it look similar to that to you?
Looks exactly the same to me. So I don't understand what the real issue with it is, but
yeah. So I mean, to me, it's something that we see works. It's not something that seems over the top in terms of like something that would cause injury to someone, or would be an advantage to your opponent by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's quite it's a disadvantage to wear it.
To whom?
For us, it's a disadvantage for us. For the wrestling aspect, obviously, again, like I said before, there's the advantage for us to not be judged. But that's pretty much the only advantage we have when it comes to our uniform. For the disadvantages, it's kind of like they can grab it. It's easier to hold on to. So especially with the women, when their legs are freshly shaven, sometimes they even have lotion on. And you have a single and they pull out or they try to kick out, you can't exactly hold on to that very well. So for us to wear clothes, they can just latch on. So for people to say that it's an advantage to us in terms of when we're wrestling, they're out of their mind. They need to wear what we wear in order to understand this, because they do know, because that's what they practice in. They don't practice in a singlet every day. Whether it's leggings, whether it's a t-shirt, whether it's a long sleeve, they wrestle in clothes. We practice in clothes. Sometimes it's sweatpants. Sometimes it's a full-on hoodie. Like, come on, like, we wrestle in this and during practice, like.
And you weigh in that uniform too, right?
Yes. So that's another thing that it's why. So there's two issues with that, really, to be honest. There's the aspect of, for a women's tournament, we should have women running the women's tournaments. For the women who are in the singlet, it's uncomfortable for them too. I mean, making weight can be difficult, especially as a heavier weight here. For making weight, an ounce can put you off. That can make you get disqualified. So there are women who are in line in just the singlet, nothing underneath, and they're sitting there. They're like this. They're really uncomfortable. It's clear, but then you have all these men at the tables weighing them in, and they got to walk up, and they have to drop their arms. They have to take their sweatshirt off. So that's the first thing, is that we need to fix that. So, I mean, just it would be nice. Or if it's in the bathroom, you can have it where women are just weighing them in. I don't understand why you need officials too. Like, we can read a scale.
Well, I do hope we get more, officials who are female. That's certainly something that we've talked at length about in different circles. So, but I hear your point. Absolutely. That would be more, it would make, I think, most athletes feel more comfortable for sure.
And then for the other issue for us is it does add, it's around 2 pounds of clothing, if I remember correctly. So we have to make sure we're under.
It's more.
It's a lot.
It's more. It's more. It's more than just a singlet. That's for sure. When I wrestled in high school and college, we never weighed in the gym. We weighed in the locker room, and some guys would be nearly naked. And so to go to a tournament where I see a gym full of hundreds of young ladies, and all these old dudes just kind of like lined up on the edge of the gym like vultures. It's just kind of wild. Like, I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And I think if you brought this issue up to some girls and gave them an option, I think some would say, yeah, I would do that. I would wait in the locker room. I don't think people know to even ask. So they just follow the rules.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some drawbacks to weighing in locker rooms too for women. I do prefer open gym weigh-ins for those types of reasons. But I think what you're referring back to is something that didn't happen long ago, to be quite honest, when you were weighing in underwear or less. And that was happening in locker rooms. And so,
I mean, even if the room was closed off to athletes only, female officials or just females weighing us in, it could be an open weigh-in. Mm-hmm. Just there are no people walking around. There are no guys at the tables. And then also, I also do judo. I did a competition in judo, and this was a ranking tournament. So this was an official tournament. And I went to go weigh in, and I expected that I would have to, I'm going to have to weigh in my gi. And they came in, and they're like, no, we do this differently. So there was 2 booths, and the men went to one booth, the women went to the other booth. And the booth, they closed the booths. The athlete went in. They're allowed to weigh in whatever they wanted to, or nothing if they really needed to. And there was a female in the women's booth, and there was a male in the men's booth. And that's how they weighed us in. And this wasn't just for a, little rinky-dink judo tournament. This was an official judo tournament. So maybe wrestling needs to latch on to some of these other methods of weighing in, because that was a great experience for me. Because generally, like, I was able to go down a weight class because I didn't have to weigh in my full gi.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, and I think your voice is missing maybe from the conversation. Maybe Muslim women's voices are missing from conversations that we're having about how we handle these types of things. So again, another reason to be having these discussions and getting people talking. So,
and let's not go too far with it. Sometimes some of this stuff, I think she may push it a little too far. We're not trying to change the world here with this. I just wanted to wrestle. Like, this might, all this talk of changes might be a little too much for people to swallow. Let's just get her to wrestle first. Once you see her wrestle, once you meet her, then ideas can change then. Respect is given to us now when they see her wrestle, when they see her compete. And I think when we start talking about all these things we'd like to see, and that it's just, I just wanted to wrestle.
No, and I get that, but I hope, Latifah, that your voice is really respected and valued. And as you're being brave enough to be a trailblazer on so many topics related to Muslim women wrestling, there's a huge group of women who are behind you and supporting you and wanting you to keep using your voice. So good stuff. All right. So would you say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Latifah, but would you say that your goal is to see this uniform that has been approved by UWW for classical women's wrestling? Would you say your goal is to see that be an option for any woman who wants to compete in women's wrestling internationally?
Yes, absolutely. it's not just me and my sisters who want to wrestle. There are a lot of Muslim girls who want to wrestle. There's a lot of talent too. And I really hope that, especially these younger girls coming up, I used to run this like jiu-jitsu wrestling practice thing, and there were these 3 little girls that would come, and they're Muslim, and they wear hijab. They would come, they'd practice in these little like dresses, and they loved it. They're beasts too. Like, you should see them wrestle. Like, it's amazing. And like, just for them to be able to actually like do something that they're good at, do something that they enjoyed, and not have to worry about this stuff. Just for them to enjoy the sport that I think everyone who wrestles enjoys wrestling. And why not make that something that everyone can experience? So,
yeah, well, there's so many wrestlers who are looking up to you right now. I'm sure so many young Muslim girls who aspire to be like you and your sisters. So you had a lot of success this year. You placed second, Latifah, at U20 World Team Trials. Were you excited about making the national team and getting the opportunity to wrestle at the Pan Am Championship once you finished the match? Were you like, yeah, I did it?
Well, honestly, we didn't even know that I'd be able to go to Pans. I had no idea until I went over to the meeting afterwards, and then they were like, "Oh, you get to go to Pans," and me and my brother were standing there, and I just looked at him. I was like, "Oh, I get to go to Pans!" Like, so I had no idea. I didn't even know that we would be able to go to the training center, the Olympic Training Center, to do the camps as well. So all of this after was like, "Oh, this is sweet!" Like, it was awesome. So yeah, I was really excited.
So that total excitement, once you figure that out, and I know it can be confusing for sure, and there was some confusion around U23 division this year with that being a world team qualifier or not. So just good rule of thumb is always to check, USA Wrestling's website. They have it all listed out every year, and we're all learning that, I think. But so once you found out,
wrestling was pure. Her wrestling was pure in the sense that the idea was she just wanted to win, to be the best she could be, for the sake of winning. Yep. We didn't know she'd qualify to represent the U.S. anywhere. We didn't know that she'd have the opportunity of these private sort of training situations at the Olympic Training Center. We didn't know that was the result. She was just wrestling. She was just wrestling, just trying to win.
And then the total excitement to hear that was something you earned, coupled with the complete disappointment when you heard that was something that you couldn't wrestle at with the modest athletic gear. So walk us through what happened after you left Women's Nationals.
So after the meeting, Coach Jessica Medina came up. She's like, "Well, we'll talk about the uniform. We're going to have a meeting about it." So we waited until it was after we got back to Buffalo. And then my dad got a call, and they said, "You can't wrestle. UWW is improving it." So it was definitely disappointing, but again, it's kind of something that's expected a little bit because, it's different. We're different. Change is a little hard for people to accept. So I think that it's a difficult pill to swallow for the world, not just, USA Wrestling, they don't have a problem with it, and we're really grateful for that. But I think there's still a little bit of work for the world to do to just accept it and go on.
So I love what you just said. USA Wrestling doesn't have a problem with it.
Yeah. So
I think now there's not a problem with it. I think it caused problems to begin with. We secured permission ahead of time, a year ago. We secured permission from USA Wrestling, and they subsequently reached out to UWW last year, before last year's World Team age determined World Team Trials. So this wasn't new. We didn't just show up. So to hear that would be an issue, or that as of right now, as of today, if there was a UWW sanctioned tournament, she could not participate unless she goes in a singlet. we didn't, we thought that was all taken care of.
Are they saying still that it's deemed a safety risk or a possible advantage?
Both of those things are what people are saying.
Okay.
Directly from USA Wrestling or UWW, I've not really received anything clearly in writing about what their perceived position is on it. I think it's somewhat difficult for UWW to say anything, being that they've already approved this uniform in classic wrestling, which is essentially freestyle wrestling, with the change of nothing more than the uniform and one period. I don't they've not said anything to me. We've received nothing. Even even not being able to compete hasn't been written to us. I spoke to some people on the phone, and they wanted me to concede and just say, yeah, okay, we won't come. But no, in writing, no, nothing has been shown, nothing's been given. And but I have been told over the phone right now, if we were to go to, it's the Canada Cup. We thought we'd go to the Canada Cup, and no, it's a UWW sanctioned event. So subsequently, we can't participate in that. So anything, even if it's domestic, the Bill Farrell, with the exception of this past year, was under normal circumstances a UWW event. So if next year's Bill Farrell is UWW sanctioned, and this hasn't gone through, she wouldn't be able to compete in it.
But is the difference because there's going to be international wrestlers there? Because isn't Women's Nationals a UWW sanctioned event? I don't know. Okay. I mean, these are all questions that have to be answered. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy to hear that our national governing body has been behind you the way that they have in terms of trying to offer opportunities.
Thanks to Cody Bickley. Cody Bickley's really doing some good work for us. Awesome. Mr. Bender, thanks so much.
Yeah, and we just I want to reiterate again that there are so many people behind this, and we want to lower the barriers to entry to women, all women. And so I'm so glad that you're here telling your story. So what can the wrestling community do to help? Tell us what we can do.
Spread the word. We have the petition out, so I'll send the link to you so that you could put it in the notes or whatever, the show notes. So we have the petition. You can sign it, share it, post it on social media, tag United World Wrestling, United World Wrestling Americas as well, because they're the ones who are dealing with the Pan Am stuff. We could tag USA Wrestling, showing your support to them. So those are the main things.
Nina Lalovich.
Sending emails to the UWW officials and organizers and stuff. We have a list of emails out and also a template as well that you can just fill out to send. So those are some helpful things that will really help us be able to wrestle.
Okay, we will definitely include the link to the petition in the show notes, Latifah, and anything else that you send to me, we'll put in there as well. Any links, just educationally for people to learn a little bit more about what's going on with your story. So is there anything else I'm missing? Anything else you guys wanted to share before I let you go today?
Just thank you to everyone who's signed it already. It means a lot to me, and also just keep in mind, like when you're signing it and sharing it, it's not just me that you're helping a whole group of girls who just want to wrestle. They just want to participate in an amazing sport. So it's not just me you're helping. You're helping wrestling as a whole. You're helping women's wrestling grow. And if that's the real goal in mind, to help wrestling grow, this is a great opportunity to jump onto. So just thank you for the support.
Well, we appreciate you, Latifah. What you're doing is important. Thank you so much for being brave and strong and continuing this awesome work.